Welcome. We're glad you're joining us tonight. If you're joining us for the first time ever, a special welcome to you. If you're joining us and you have before, we welcome you back. We do it's not a bit of an open forum thing. We want you to ask questions, and so we are here to help you understand God. And that's the whole purpose of this. We want you to know God. We want you to know who He is and that He has made Himself available to know. And so tonight, we're going to be talking about the difference between wisdom and foolishness. Quick little illustration to kind of give you an idea of where we're headed tonight. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but traffic has definitely picked up in the Bay Area. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's just because I've been so used to being on the road without a lot of people there, but it seems like COVID has removed people's ability to drive or their knowledge on best practices behind a wheel. And I've been cut off and almost hit so many times in the last 2 weeks, it's actually kind of laughable. And I have been in traffic because of accidents, I feel like more times than I can count over the last couple of weeks specifically. As they've started opening the mask mandates, it seems like everybody's just out a lot more. And so anyway, I'm driving to the podcast tonight, and I see a guy who accelerates pretty fast by me, and it looks like he's going to cut me off. There's no room for him in this other car to, or for him to cut in front of me, but he's definitely going to go in front of me. And so I anticipated this, and I just took my foot off the gas, hit my brake a little bit, and let him go by. Just tap my brake and let him just pass on up. And so I, could have justified speeding up and being being contentious with him, but I chose wisdom, and that's kind of the direction I want to go with this. I foresaw something coming that could have been problematic, and so I just chose to back off. Now that hasn't always been me. I learned this, if I'm honest, from my pastor. I haven't always quite had the level of respect on the road as I do now, but I learned wisdom in situations that a lot of people don't ever really chase down. And so where I want to go tonight is wisdom and prudence are two words that are very similar to each other, and they're used a lot in especially in the book of Proverbs. And wisdom is kind of knowing what's right and wrong in the moment, and prudent is very similar, but it's more of a foresight thing. So it's people that can look forward and prepare for things that are to come. And so there's a lot of different angles we could take this from, but I really just want to try and split it right down the middle and look at what is wisdom and what is foolishness and why does it matter. So give me a good definition of what wisdom is.
Well, the difference between wisdom and knowledge, I think, is very important to understand that when we're talking about wisdom, it's knowledge being able to be put to use properly. And so that's probably a better way of describing the differences of wisdom and knowledge is, knowledge, things about certain things, but you may not know how to use that knowledge effectively. And so wisdom is going to be the idea of being able to make the appropriate application at the right time.
So why is that important when it comes to the Bible? Says that there's a scripture that says the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so there's this connection made between, and then another scripture says a foolish man said in his heart there is no God. And so it's almost like there's this context. Wisdom exists within the context of God or God's existence in the mind.
Yeah.
So how does that work for the common man?
Well, that's so you're kind of connecting two things together. The idea of wisdom stands by itself. You actually have through the book of Proverbs all kinds of different texts talking about wisdom crying in the streets, and wisdom was there when God created the earth and this kind of stuff. And so you have all those kinds of scriptures. So yes, wisdom has to do with God, of course, but I think the most important thing is that whole idea of the beginning of wisdom. That God is the beginning of wisdom. And I think that's a very, very critical element to have in mind, is that idea of that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Like I said about practical application. So here's the thing: is having a fear of God. You're on the right path, because you're starting with the idea of having a respect and a reverence for who God is, and not doing your own thing. There are people that, especially people that they've maybe been to church for a while, and then they've left church. It's called backsliding. They go back into the world. And something that my pastor used to say is backsliding makes you stupid. And so which is, because that's the opposite.
Yeah.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Yeah. And so when you no longer fear God, you decide you're just going to go back in the world, you're going to play games. Well, you're not wise anymore. You've actually traded wisdom for stupidity. Mm-hmm. And so now you've embarked on a life of stupidity.
So what can you, so Proverbs really does, and when you think about wisdom, Proverbs really is the book to go to. When you talk about, say, the scriptures you quoted in the beginning, seek wisdom out, search for her, and that talks about her value, and so this idea of wisdom is always compared in opposite to foolishness, and it's almost like Proverbs. There's a couple different things like this, like he talks about laziness and diligence, prudence and wisdom versus like foolishness and simplicity or simple-mindedness. And then ultimately righteousness and wickedness. And he puts men in these categories. And, righteous people do this, wicked people do this, lazy people do this, diligent people do this. Yeah. And so it breaks it down. Now, my question is, can you draw a line for people and separate wise men versus foolish men? Or is it in a man that there's wisdom and foolishness? In other words, like, do you have to make constant foolish decisions in order to be a fool? Or are you a fool when you've made a foolish decision?
No. There's not really a one before the other type of a thing. Again, like a lot of these issues are mental. It's a way of thinking. Yeah. So somebody who makes foolish decisions. Like somebody who, like, for example, a repetitive backslider. That's somebody whose thinking is foolish. Because they wouldn't be coming in and out, in and out, in and out. If they had understood, if they truly understood God, then they wouldn't be doing that in and out, in and out, in and out. And because you don't have to. It's not a requirement to backslide. It's not a requirement to be tempted into sin and want to go back into the world. It is simply your thinking just isn't working properly. So it's a thought process. And so people who make foolish decisions, that comes out of a foolish way of thinking. Their foundation. They're not wise people. And it's funny because you do see the reality. Somebody who's what's the word I want to use? They're not interested in learning. They're not interested in education. They are also foolish people. You can tell. The people, they just don't like to read. No, I'm not really into reading. I'm not really into self-improvement, things like that. If I want to learn how to do something, I'll just go do it. And they're never really any good at it. They just go do stuff, and they don't ask for information. They don't talk to people who do that thing. They're just kind of just do things by their own thinking. Yeah. They tend to be foolish.
So we have a question here. We'll get to this real quick. Can you explain the type of fear the Bible the type of fear the Bible talks about? It's easy to confuse it with fear, as in I'm scared of this or that.
Yeah, that's what I said when I mentioned about the idea of fear, of having a reverence, respect for God. That's the kind of fear that the Bible's talking about, is having a reverence for God. And there needs to be, you need to be afraid as well. Jesus says, don't fear those who can kill the body, but fear those who fear him who can kill the body and send and destroy the soul in hell. And so there's a very clear understanding that, it's not just respect, or reverence, it's understanding. And there should be a healthy fear that I'm afraid. Like for me personally, I'm afraid to backslide. Okay, I'm scared of the idea of backsliding, because I know that when you leave God and you go back into the world, that you're where you end up is just the luck of the draw. You know, there's you have no control over anything. It's like being in a car that's driving 100 miles an hour with no steering wheel, no gas, no brake, no nothing. And as long as the road keeps going, you'll be fine. And as long as the car doesn't move to the left or to the right, you'll be fine. But the chances of that actually happening are very slim, and you will eventually crash. And even if you don't crash in this life, you will definitely crash in the next.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just all the way around, just foolish.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You say that. My next kind of question was around how do you have? Is it possible to have wisdom and not believe in God?
No. No, that was why, you know, it says the foolish has said in his heart, there is no God, the fool.
Yeah.
You know, is that there's not. You can't you can be smart, okay, you can be intelligent, but wisdom.
So there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom.
Yeah, you can be intelligent and you can achieve things, but wisdom's a whole nother level. You know, it's just a whole nother level. I always pull from the illustration of, you have people that are very, very smart. You know, we live in the Bay Area as a tech world, and you've got all these tech people, but can they stay married?
Yeah.
You know, that requires wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, that's not just intelligence. It's wisdom. It's being able to understand the dynamics of you know, how we're to behave. You know, very critical.
So take me more into this side, the concept of wisdom, you know, being needed to stay married. Give me a scenario, like, you know, try to build on that a little bit. Tell me more about how wisdom applies to keeping your marriage together.
Well, you have to,
so that I can understand, mainly so I can understand the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah. Well, you have to, you know, because the Bible talks about, you know, our understanding, that there are things that we have to understand that they're not just knowledge. It's like I said, it's being able to put knowledge into use. You know, that's very, very important. So the Bible talks about dwelling with your wife according to knowledge, and it uses the word knowledge, giving honor to her as the weaker vessel. Okay, so this is a reality, you know, that the wife is more fragile. You know, and so, you know, as men can say almost anything to each other. Most men can say almost anything to each other. You know, because I know there's some men that are they're mama's boys, and they don't really qualify.
Are we coming close to your sermon again? By the way, title of the sermon: "It's a man's world."
It's a man's world. Yeah, no, I am, and I'm trying to avoid. I wasn't going to mention it because I thought, no, I don't want to get into that again. But the idea, you know, of understanding the differences between men and women is what makes a marriage work. They're not two people that are the same, you know, makeup. They're not the same. They're different. They have different temperaments. They have different personalities. They have different ways of functioning. You know, that's just the difference between men and women. Now you've got the difference between a woman and other women, and a difference between a man and other men. And so you have all these things that are, you know, you have to learn. You know, wisdom is how you learn them. Certain places that are, you know, what I've learned over the years, you know, is that you can't change another person, and so you have to be really careful about how you try to approach conflict. You know, if in marriage, for example, is if your idea of conflict is, I'm right and you're going to change, and I'm going to change you, then you're a fool. You know, you're not using wisdom, because number one, you can't change another person, and number two, you're not right. You know, from the standpoint of that, you are right and your wife is wrong. There are degrees. You know, which is another form of wisdom. You know, there's in my series, I'm going to start getting more into the details of this on Sunday morning or Sunday night, talking about the idea of cognitive distortions. You know, the idea that, you know, that understanding the differences between shades, you know, of gray, you know, that everything is not just black and white, you know, and so it's not, I'm right, you're wrong. You know, you might have more points than the other person, but they're not entirely wrong. Their points, count. And if you have wisdom, then you will recognize where their points are right and yours are not, And so that there's a wisdom there.
Question here. If people would ask, if God is so loving, then why would he cast others into hell? I would say he has standards just like we have standards. What would you say?
Yeah, that's off topic. We'll leave that to the end.
Okay. Yes, we'll come back to that, Kay. So you're talking about this idea of yes, off topic. We're talking about this idea of conflict, right? Yeah. And one of the scriptures I had here is a wise man's wrath is known immediately, but a prudent man hides a fault or covers insult. And so this idea of actually one translation says the word ignores an insult. What is the advantage to doing something like that? Doesn't that put somebody who's wise in a position to get just taken advantage of?
Yeah. Wise people get taken advantage of all the time, but in the end they win. Not in the end. I mean, always.
Yeah.
When things play out.
Give me an example of that.
When you are the kind of person that is not a brawler, and you're confronted by a brawler, and you just let the brawler, yell and scream, and you just stick to the facts. Just stick to, okay, well, that's one way of looking at things, but there's other ways of looking at things. In the end, you give the brawler no enjoyment because you're not giving him anything to fight with you over. Mm-hmm. Brawlers only like other brawlers, or people who don't say anything. And so a wise man is able with his words to be able to diffuse what a brawler is saying. It's actually a technique in that book I was mentioning about feeling good. Dr. David Burns is one of, when you're confronted with somebody and they say, you stink, you're a terrible boss, you've messed up everything, I hate your guts, I wish I didn't have to work for you. And, you have an employee that's like that, you can just simply just say, okay, yeah, I'm probably not the best boss, and I do screw up on occasion. And, so did you have any other particular thing in mind, and you can kind of go through those things. And then it takes the wind out of the sails of somebody who just wants to air their grievance, or which is often the case, is that they get to the true reason why they're upset. Mm-hmm. And then you can actually deal with things. And the real reason is because Joe got a raise and Bill didn't, and that's why he hates, you, is because you didn't give him a raise, and nothing to do with anything that you've done, mm-hmm. As far as all those other things that are being said. Mm-hmm. And so that's, a man of wisdom will win in the end, is that when he gets to the end of the conversation, he'll have either saved himself the embarrassment of getting into a battle of words, or he will be able to actually win that person over, or at least come to some kind of agreement, or, something along those lines.
Anthony Miner, welcome. Where was the breakdown with King Solomon? This is actually one of my questions. Being the wisest man that lived, how did the idolatry creep in from his wives? Did he simply stop fearing God that led to loss of wisdom?
Well, with Solomon, when you're talking about the idea of wisdom, with Solomon, he was the wisest man. God gave him that wisdom. But if you read through Ecclesiastes, why is he trying these things? He talks about all these things that he's tried. All these, and he said, and I found that they were vanity. And so it was very interesting to me that he's willing to try all levels and has observed things and all that goes on in Solomon. I think Solomon was a wise man, but he also was willing to go places, that he shouldn't have gone.
Like Sherlock,
had no
he
restraint.
Had some kind of he was just so bored with all this knowledge.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what drove him that way. But as far as the idolatry issue, it's I don't think we can just, because God gave somebody wisdom doesn't mean that he's going to use it. And I think that's the mistake we make when we talk about how Solomon, was the wisest man in the world. Well, the Bible says that God gave him wisdom, because he didn't ask for it, and he gave him riches, but he did foolish things, and so I think you can go too far, with this idea. And again, this is a good place where shades of gray come in.
Yeah.
Is when did he go from wise to not wise? Yeah. There was never.
That's exactly what I was asking when I asked the question around, like, can you just cut it down the middle inside of a person?
No, you absolutely can't, because life doesn't work like that. And this is healthy thinking, is to understand that both can be true. You can be wise and stupid. You just can't be wise and stupid at the exact same moment. But you can be wise and then a minute later be stupid. So it's not cut and dry. That you have a one or the other.
Is the wife described in Proverbs 31, the whole chapter 10, an impossibility? Is it the female equivalent of being Christ-like for men, loving your wife as Christ loves the church? I have my own kind of opinion about that verse, because it's interesting the way it's described, because Solomon says, a virtuous woman who can find. It almost implies that he's never found one. And the fact that he had thousands of wives probably means he was pretty aggressive looking. So what's that sermon you're preaching again?
It's a man's world. And so the idea, I believe, is I don't think it's fictitious or an impossibility. I just think it's a very difficult thing to achieve, but it is indeed achievable. This is Solomon's giving the idea of a virtuous woman. This is a virtuous woman. These are the qualities that make up a virtuous woman. I would love, that we would have a whole chapter in the Bible what it means to be a virtuous man. That would be a real great thing. But there isn't. The whole Bible is written for how for a man to be virtuous.
Yeah.
But so no, I don't think it's an impossibility as much as that's the wisdom of a virtuous woman. She's industrious. She looks after her home. A lot of the classic ideas and thoughts get kind of tossed aside when you read Proverbs 31 of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a wife. A wife, stays home. She doesn't do anything. She just cooks dinner and keeps the house clean and doesn't do anything else. If she's a real wife, well, not that doing those things doesn't take up a lot of time and doesn't require a measure of again, this is part of the thing about men and women. I said my son and daughter-in-law have moved here, and their youngest Ava has been sick, and at the same time very, very testy as well. And they were staying at my house while they were looking for a place, and just the nonstop crying. I mean, just nonstop crying. And I told my daughter-in-law, I said, I'm very, very proud of you. I said, because you have shown the utmost patience in dealing with her and trying to get her to calm down and not losing it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I am so glad that I'm not a mother. Because of the challenge. The challenge of being able to have that patience and to work through those things. There's certainly something, that God has placed into women, that has much more patience for that kind of a thing that as a man, I just don't have. I mean, it just doesn't exist. I could do it, but I would have to switch off parts of my brain, that would go crazy if they were on. And I'm sure women have to do the same thing, but it's just the whole idea of raising kids. I mean, and you listen to moms all get together and talk, and the ahs and oohs and and that kind of stuff, which is just not even ah and ooh. They're not even vocabulary words for me. I don't even have those in my vocabulary. I never look at anything and go ah or ooh.
Unless you're being extremely sarcastic.
Well, yes,
in that moment.
unless I'm being sarcastic, yeah. But so you're kind of getting off topic with this, but the idea, is that's wisdom. That's wisdom. You can't yell at a kid, an infant that's crying incessantly. Shut up. It's just not going to make any difference. They're too young. They don't even know what the word shut up means. The tone of voice might give them some idea, but it's like you're like the Far Side comic of the guy trying to train his dog, and he says blah 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 Fido, blah 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 Fido, blah 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 Fido, blah blah blah. It's like that's kids are like that. They just know their name, and they know don't, and a few things like that, and it's really requires there to be something there.
Yeah.
So but then you've got that, and then on top of that you've got being able to go and find a field and do business and stuff like that she's doing as well. And so I'm sure that it's not, the idea isn't her doing all this at the same time. That there's time and a place for these kinds of things, but they're all part of the wisdom of a Proverbs 31 woman. So
is the concept of a virtuous woman a heart issue?
Well, as you see the idea, as you see what she does, everything is a heart issue. Virtue is a heart issue to start with anyway. Everything has to come out of the heart. We talked about that in the sermon on Wednesday, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so, or Sunday, and so that kind of thing is constantly an issue. Wisdom is a heart issue. It's because it's knowledge applied, which becomes a hard issue.
Mm-hmm. So I was actually talking to a guy today. He's a very intelligent guy. He actually used to work for Tesla, and he did a lot of really big work for Tesla. And he had I asked him how he ended up at our company, and he said, well, he left Tesla and kind of was doing like some contracting at the time, like basically just managing some other contracts. They were doing remodels at their house and stuff. So he was kind of just running this project at his house. And he was, Brittany, we'll get to that, how to get wisdom. But he was talking about, I asked him, I wanted to know everything about him, really. I was just interested in knowing a bit about him. And he said, during that time I was basically a stay-at-home dad. And he said, and honestly, that didn't work out very well, because it's just the most thankless job ever. And he said, I have no idea how I'm so grateful I'm not a mom. And he said, it's just like, anyway, that didn't go well. So I moved on to doing, engineering. He's an engineer, and he's a very good engineer. And so it just goes to show that this idea, what you're saying, of you can have knowledge, but when wisdom is required, it's there's a big gap.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that that really like stuck out to me in this whole subject is this scripture I heard or read. The prudent man sees evil coming and hides from it, but the simple passes on and is punished. And so this. Can
we go backwards just for a minute? Because you said something that I thought was very, very important to grasp a hold of, is talking about how being a mother is a thankless job, and that it's what's important to understand about that idea and that thought is what he's talking about. It does nothing for the human, for the male, testosterone filled individual. I need to go, make things or break things. That's it. So that idea, when because I think this is very important, and I'm going to go into this in more detail tomorrow. But this whole idea of a man's world is that idea of being thankless is being involved in a thankless job is far, far more crucial to a man than it is to a woman. Now, I'm not talking about ego. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about something inside of the man that is driven to achieve, driven to accomplish, driven to complete. And something like raising kids, being a mom, there's never a day where you talk about what you've accomplished, because you've got to start all over the next day. And there are jobs that
except with their husband.
there are jobs that are not tech jobs, but manufacturing jobs that, because I've been involved in manufacturing before, that I could never do. Because it's so repetitive and it's the same thing day after day after day after day. I could never do it because it just literally, sitting with your eyes on a microscope. As women, this company I worked at, they had under the microscope, all day long, doing the same thing over and over and over again all day long. And I never once looked at them and said, how stupid, how brainless. I never looked at them in any kind of negative context. I looked at it and thought, how do you do it?
Yeah.
This is incredible. How do you do this? How can you achieve this? Every day you come in. The world is run by women. We wouldn't have the things that we have today.
Are you changing your context for tomorrow's sermon? Are you changing your
No.
You're going to go home and rewrite your sermon. It's going to be called It's a Woman's World.
No, the world is run by women who do manufacturing.
Yeah.
That is all there is to it. The men, creative and designing and all this wonderful stuff, at the end of the day, that's more easy. That's more easy to do that as a man, because it's more natural. It's pleasurable. See, and this is the thing is that with kids, as mothers, it's pleasurable for a mom to be a mom. It's pleasurable. For a man to be a mom is not pleasurable. And this is the problem. And so this is the core of what I'm talking about when I talk about wisdom, is understanding these things, understanding these comments. It's not about intelligence. It's about recognizing fit, when a certain thing fits in a certain place.
Okay. That was a hard stop. That was like, are you gonna done? All right. We can change the title of this podcast if we want.
Yeah.
Really. The difference between men and women.
No, go on to your.
A prudent man sees evil and hides from it, but the simple passes on and is punished. Okay, so anyway, the point is everything we do as a church, everything you do as a pastor, in a lot of ways is to warn people of things that are to come, how to have wisdom in situations like that. I would have never known how to be a proper husband had I not paid attention to the example that you've set, and I've also gleaned from other good marriages and other good examples, knowing how to act in my job. I've come to a place where when things get rough or weird or I don't quite know how to handle them, it's like if I keep going forward in this could go bad, and so I should probably get advice.
Yeah.
And so I go and seek advice about it and come back to the situation more well prepared. Same thing with so in the life of the church, you have this wisdom to have a survivable marriage, have a good marriage. You can learn how to raise kids. You learn how to work with difficult people. You learn how to deal with your own temptations and sins and all kinds of things that if you were left by yourself would turn out evil. They would turn out bad. But this idea of wisdom leading you to somewhere that would actually keep you and your entire life safe and teach you how to live a safe life actually is something you got to make a decision to want, right? Why is it that we so often justify foolishness and doing things our own way? Ultimately, obviously, this all leads you to heaven. But how come it's so easy to justify living a foolish life?
Short-term thinking. It's short-term thinking.
Yeah.
You got to have it right now, and you see people they want the best that life has to offer right now, and so what ends up happening is that they get to a point to where payday comes, and because they're not able to pay the price. And so you have this, like, for example, working hard and saving money. And then eventually when you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s, you're able to, go on your dream vacation or buy your dream car or your dream home or whatever, and you're able to have these things and enjoy them for the duration of your life, where other people, they want that in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And so they just use credit cards and build up credit so they can buy a house and be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for their house, or be in debt for the car or whatever, credit card debt. And so they're literally working 40, 50, 60 hours a week in order to be able to pay for their past, not their future.
Right.
And that's foolish, because it's a time frame issue, is that they don't want to wait till later on, because you don't know how long you're going to be here, and I may die before then. Well, but what if you don't? You wish you had died before then, because you've got nothing to look forward to now, because you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and you can't afford anything more. And now you're heading towards your peak earning power. And what ends up happening is you end up getting to a place in life where you have to realize, well, I had it, I squandered my future, in my present, because you lack wisdom. So it's a timing issue.
So why is it's interesting you say that, because the word, like I said, prudent in the very beginning of prudence is like wisdom for the future. It literally is talking about somebody who looks at the future and prepares for it. But how do you break out of a mindset? 'Cause if we're honest, and it's taken me a long time to even start thinking like that. I wasn't necessarily raised with the future in mind. I was raised very often the decisions for now, and what would make me happy now, what would make me fulfilled now, and that's I've regretted a lot of that, those decisions. How do you break out of that? Because for me, it was a long process.
Yeah, well, that scripture, a prudent man foresees evil. So he's not just, that's evil, I got to be careful. No, he's looking down the road, and so that's the issue, is, again, this timing thing, is that you look at it. I've been talking for a long time now about buying a new car and moving, and it's a year and a half, I think it's been, since we're moving and trying to move. And I look at a place and I think that place is not much better than where we're living now, and it's more expensive, and it may be closer to the church, which is kind of what I wanted to achieve. But not being close to the church is more of just a matter of convenience. And looking at this and thinking, I just can't. I'm not going to make a decision like that. And I was telling my wife, it's a couple of expensive decisions we've been talking about, buying a new car and things. And I told her, I was looking at a car that I wanted to buy, and I said, if I do this, this will be the first foolish decision I make financially in my life. Because I was taught from a young age, with my dad. My first car, he didn't give me the money for it. I had to take out a loan. He co-signed for the loan, but I had to pay the loan back, so I had a monthly payment. And then wrecked the car, and had to pay. Fortunately, it was a small loan, and I had to pay that off. And I realized, wow, this is not a good idea. It's better to be able to pay cash. And I just started paying cash for things, and if I had the money, then I would buy it. And I never bought a car. I've never had a loan for a car in my entire life. I've never had a loan, period, except for a school loan. And the only reason that I had the school loan was because the interest rate at the time was below the actual interest rate of my checking account. And so it was like, or my savings account. And so it was like, well, I can take all this money and I could put it into school, or I could leave that money there and then pay the loan with the interest from that I'm making off the savings. And so school virtually became free, over time because of compounded interest. And so there's, these are the kinds of things that are what wisdom is made of. And so, but you have to be able to see things long term. You have to be able to look, you have to be able to see down the road. Somebody who wants to buy, $30,000-$40,000 car, all they know is the smell of the interior. It's all they know. They don't know anything else. They just know what it smells like, and they know what it looks like to be driving that and how cool they feel driving that. But that all within 2 months, both those things wear off, both the smell and the cool. And now it's just an expensive car, And so it's like, and I've been thinking about it, and this is the funny thing is that I can afford to do these things, but it's like, do I really want to do it? It's not even an issue of affording it. It's, do I want to do it? Because it's a foolish decision. There's no wisdom in it. It's just yeah, it's kind of cool, and it'll be okay for a while, but I don't drive a lot. So it's like, how much time am I going to be spending in this car? Things like that. A house, paying another $1,000 a month, which in the Bay Area is not a lot, but paying that, and then, okay, so that's saved me 2 minutes driving, 3-4 minutes driving, is it worth it? And so those kinds of things. See, wisdom is always looking at the price of a thing, and looking at down the road. Yeah. Will it still be worth the same value?
But how do you get that though? Like, how do you step out of being, because the truth is we live in a very immediate, a generation of immediacy. Yeah. Everything is right now, and you can get everything right now. So how do you get out of that?
Well,
how do you get wisdom?
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a simple example. Microwave generation. The whole idea of the microwave generation. We don't use it much anymore because microwave, everyone has one. But there was a time when nobody had microwaves, and all of a sudden there was a microwave generation, and you're waiting 3 minutes, for something to heat up that used to take 20 or 30 minutes, and so this really wonderful, is it 2 or 3 minutes, but stuff that's been put in a microwave tastes like crap. And that's the price you pay for 3-minute food.
But not everybody feels like that.
Well,
see, that's the thing. The difference is that you're coming from a mindset of trained with wisdom.
No. It isn't that everybody doesn't feel like that. It's that some people don't really care about what it tastes like. It's just not important to them.
Listen, man.
They just want to have it now. They got to have it now.
So there's a difference though. Like I know a bean and cheese burrito from Costco, a frozen burrito in the microwave is crap. I know that. I know it is crap.
Yeah.
But with some ranch dressing, man.
No. You're
missing. It satisfies the taste. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but
you get this.
Number one, it's not food. Okay, right? It's not food. It's not. It's been processed, heavily processed.
There's a difference between knowledge and taste, though.
It's filled with preservatives and things like that. No, I said it's crap. I didn't say it tastes like crap. I said it's crap.
Yeah.
And so
you said it's not food.
It's not food. Yeah, and so but you've got all these compromises in order to be able to minimize to take that 20-minute time down to 3 minutes. You have to compromise. You have to make a ton of compromises, and the issue is you're eating, right? And so what are you eating for? Are you eating for taste? Are you eating for pleasure? Are you eating because you really want this? Those kinds of things. And so you can get used to the taste of garbage. You can. We do this. Most of the shelves in the supermarkets are filled with garbage, and you can get used to that. But it's instant. And this is the problem is that ice cream and you look at. Whatever you can go grab from a box or grab out of the refrigerator or grab out of the freezer and eat instantly is not good for you. Why is that? It's because that's the trade. That's the trade for instantaneous gratification. Is you have to compromise. You always have to compromise. And so if you learn how to weigh up the compromises, then you can come out of it. Okay, so I can buy a car on credit right now. and I can have this really cool car, and I can have it right this second, or I can work for the next 6 months and put money aside and get myself into a situation to where I could buy a used version of that same car, and I don't have any payments on it, and it's going to look the same. It's going to be just as cool and just as everything else down the road. You may think you look cool in driving your shiny car, but like I said, 2 or 3 months from now, it's not going to be a shiny car anymore. It's just going to be a car. It's going to be a used car. And so it's learning how to be able to recognize the compromises. That's really where the wisdom comes in, is to be able to say, okay, this is a compromise.
But isn't it wisdom to recognize the compromise?
Well, but
so how do you get from having no wisdom?
Well, this is what I'm saying is you have to learn how to look at the compromises. What are the decisions that I'm going to make?
Yeah.
Right now, okay, I can do this right this second, but what does it mean long term? And what if I waited 6 months or a year or 2 years or 10 years?
Yeah.
If I wait, how is that going to change things? What's going to be different?
So that would require somebody to sit back and reevaluate their entire life.
Well, if you want to be wise, that's how you do it.
Yeah,
you have to reevaluate your entire life, because once you start developing, this is the interesting thing about wisdom, is when you begin to develop wisdom, when you begin to do that, you start looking at the compromises, you start looking down the road, you start thinking futuristically about life. You start thinking about this, if I do this, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and that's going to happen. And you actually look at it from a true wise perspective, not, trying to, candy coat everything.
Yeah.
But you're actually, okay, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, the other thing. You begin
we talked about this issue of honesty before, being honest with yourself.
Yeah. But you get to a place to where you actually begin to you begin to see the future, and there's nothing more cool than that.
Yeah.
There's nothing more cool than being able to see the future. I mean, it's good and it's bad. I've had some circumstances that I knew what I had to do, and I had to go here and do this and do that and do the other thing, and there were other people involved, and I knew the people, and I knew the personalities that were involved, and I knew all the situations that were involved, and I thought, this is not going to be fun. This is going to be horrible. I know it's going to be horrible, and I would think, okay, how can I make it not horrible? And I would try to work things out, and then I would think, there are puzzle pieces in this that they're not up to me. And if it goes this way, it's to actually be able to have an answer to situations and circumstances that as they arise, because I've already thought about it all. I've already thought about it. And my son Elliot was involved in one of these moments, and another friend of mine used to say this all the time. He said, Dad, he said, you'd make a great lawyer. And it wasn't the issue of being able to argue my way out of a circumstance. It's that as I would think about these things, and as I would pray about these things, I would begin to see the future. How I'd watch the scenario play out, and then I would watch how a person would respond, or how a situation would occur, or what would happen here or there or the other thing. And I would be able to see these things, knowing previous, being able to previous circumstances in previous situations with similar variables.
Yeah.
To be able to look at that and say, I know this is how this is going to go. It's going to go this way. If that happens like that, then that's going to do that, and that's going to do that. And there's going to be this chain reaction of events. And if that happens, there's nothing I can do to stop this. And it's going to get very ugly, because I'm going to have to change it. I'm going to have to change the events. I'm going to have to jump in and be the bad guy, in order to derail this train that's headed off a cliff, And so when you learn how to do this, you begin to work with wisdom, and you think, okay, I know how this is all going to play out, and it does play out that way, and you can take advantage of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not into doing a lot of heavy investing in things like that. I do some investing, but nothing major. But I thought about it, and I thought, who couldn't, if they had just taken 10 minutes to think about our current government, the current direction of our country, the current way of thinking, population-wise, the move towards green and all these kinds of energy independence, not energy independence, but green energy, and all that push to go this direction. Who couldn't have predicted that the best thing to buy would have been shares of oil? Who couldn't have predicted that? I mean, right now, gas is outrageous. I think it's $120 a barrel or something like that. It's for oil. And who couldn't have predicted that? Who couldn't have seen this coming with Russia and Putin and all that's going on, where we are, where we get our oil from? If you knew all these factors, you wouldn't be predicting the future. It would be obvious that is the future, and so, but now the future is here, and, those who back, but when people who make money, off of looking at these kinds of things, probably, they're laughing all the way to the bank now, because the wisdom to put all the puzzle pieces together, they can take advantage of it now, knowing what the future is going to bring, having a confidence. I mean, it's a gamble, but it's not a gamble. I mean, it's a gamble because there's always variables and things can always go the wrong way. But when you're looking at things that are like, there's a 90% chance this is the way things are going to go, So that's what I'm talking about is when you learn how to live with wisdom, you learn how to be able to gauge the future, and you can look at things and you can say, if I do this right now, there's a 70 to 80% chance this is going to be a bad idea, and you don't do it. And then things go another direction and you realize, hey, that was a smart move. I'm glad I did that. You can see the fruit of it down the road. Because that's the thing is every decision you make, you can see the fruit of it down the road. It's not like, oh, what if you had done this back then? What if you had done this a million years ago? It's like, what if I had understood compound interest at 15 years old, and my first job working for my dad, I would have put all my money in the bank. And I would have just done that. I mean, and now I'm 60. I mean, 45 years of compound interest, I would probably be a multi-millionaire. Well, that's an if, that's, there's no guarantee of those kinds of things. Just because I know about compound interest and just because I know about certain things doesn't mean that I, would be guaranteed to be a multi-millionaire. But the point that I'm making with this is that you can begin to develop an understanding of how things go, and how life functions and how things, the decisions you have made and your tendencies, and you learn your weaknesses and your strengths, and you begin to be honest with yourself, like what we talked about before, and in your estimations of things, you reap the benefit of it. You reap the blessing of walking in wisdom. There's no such thing as a stupid person who's better off than a wise person. There's just no such thing. That's why the Bible can say these things emphatically, like the one, a prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but a simple man presses on. But the simple pass on and are punished, because that's the regular event that happens to the simple, to those who will not consider the future, to those who are only functioning off of the now. That's what happens. It's just a reality.
So, okay, Brittany, if that didn't answer your question, you can rephrase it. But I feel like that was pretty good. So what you're describing though, and I'll use the investment idea as an illustration in that, but that requires a lifestyle of watching, right? And paying attention in the right direction. These investors and guys and it's repeated itself over and over and over again, different phases, different advances in technology, different movements of society have produced these men who were waiting for moments like that. And they were looking for it, and they were watching for it, preparing for it. And so when you have the situation, let's bring this back to a spiritual, how this relates spiritually. Somebody who let's just say they're not a believer in God, or let's just say they're kind of in the middle. They have no idea, right? They don't know. But the majority, and the Bible says this pretty clearly, many there be that go by it, the wide road that leads to destruction, right? So from the church's perspective, the majority is saying there is no God, or they're living like there is no God. And then the minority is saying, watch for the future. Watch out for the future.
I don't quite agree with that. Okay. I don't quite agree with that. The wide road is the road that leads to destruction, but that doesn't have, and there are many that are on that road. It doesn't necessarily mean there's no belief in God.
Okay, I said, or they're living as if there is no God.
They're living ignorant of God.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of describing it.
So either way, that's a rabbit trail. But the point is that you can say that this person doesn't know the future, right? And so you have a small group of people, and I'm saying that on purpose, saying you need to look towards eternity, prepare yourself for a heaven and hell, and live a certain way. It's going to require a lifestyle. You're going to have to live your life a certain way for the rest of your life, right? How do you get from, how do you convince yourself? How do you tell a person like that, listen, this is the right way? I know less people are saying it, but this is wisdom. And if you start down this road, it'll grow. But then there's the majority of people that are, just living however they want and either ignorantly or professing there is no God, whatever. It's still, in this context, foolish.
Well, that's the reason why I say ignorant, is that I don't know. I would, there's a difference between ignorant and foolish. Foolish really is, when I think of somebody who's foolish, I think of I keep saying this, but I think of backsliders because they know the truth and have rejected it. It's different. It's different from knowing something and rejecting it than not knowing it. So are men going to die and stand before God and be surprised? Yeah. Really? Yeah. I think people are going to go, oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Really? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely. Even Christians who don't go to heaven. Yeah. And I use that term Christian loosely in that context. But would you call them, okay, I see what you're saying by ignorant. I think we're playing a bit with semantics, but ignorant meaning they don't know. They genuinely don't know. They're not rejecting. But at some point they have rejected knowledge, right? So here's the difference between you and me. Okay, here's the difference between you and me and me and many, many Christians is that this idea that everybody's making decisions with this sort of mental acknowledgement that they are violating something. It's not true. Yeah, that's why I said it's just not true. I think I know what you're getting at. That's not. But it's not true because because you can't reject something you don't know about. How do you possibly reject something that you don't know? By rejecting the opportunity to know. There's going to be a lot of people that stand before God and didn't realize how much truth there was to what they said no to. Well, see, this is what I mean, is this idea that they're saying no. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to stand before God and they're going to go, I hadn't a clue I was really going to hell. I really thought I was going to heaven. I really believed if there was a God, I really believed that I made all the right choices. I really believed that I did all the things that I was supposed to do and that I really believe that I made all the right choices in life. And here I am. Now I'm going to be going to hell for all eternity. Don't you think that would give them a bit of an excuse, though? Doesn't matter if they have an excuse. But the Bible says they will have no excuse. Listen, these are things that are so difficult to try to understand. Is that when the Bible says you have no excuse, it doesn't mean you're not going to try to use one. It doesn't mean that you're going to have one. Then you're consciously making up an excuse. Oh, no, I got to come up with an excuse real quick. Versus actually being genuinely ignorant. When it says that they're without excuse, okay, it means what it says. They're without excuse. No, listen, you can't. Just because you thought that you were doing everything right, it's not an excuse. Okay, help me understand that, because I'm not quite lining up with what you're saying. Because you have this idea in your thinking that everybody down deep, down, all the way down deep inside of there, everybody really knows there's a God, there's a heaven, there's a hell, there's eternity, and they're sinners, and if they don't have Jesus as their Savior, they're going to heaven. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. No, I don't believe that. The scripture that I just quoted says the fool has said in his heart there is no God. But your words and your arguments that you're giving right now say that. They had to have rejected, right? Rejected what? Well, they said no. Said no to what? How do you know they said no? What did they say? When did they say no? See, not everybody, is a rejecter. And this is the thing. And then there's also the shades of gray is that there's I don't want to have anything to do with God, Jesus, eternity, salvation, heaven, hell. And then there's, listen, I don't want to talk about this. Yeah. And they're two totally different things. Two totally different things. But both forms of a rejection. They're both forms of an ejection. Of rejection. Yes, but you can't you can't put them in the same category that they're both, well, they're just they're rejections. Doesn't matter whether it's a little one or a big one. Doesn't matter. No big deal. Rejection is rejection.
Yeah.
You can't say that.
Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying, but yeah, I think we've gone way off in another direction. But
no. The
I'm
idea,
trying to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the idea is you're wanting to come from the standpoint of people who have willfully rejected the truth. What about them, and how are they going to get to the place to where they can actually become believers in truth? But you can't.
No, that's not what I said.
Yeah, because
I lumped everybody into one bucket.
Yeah,
everybody into one bucket.
You said
on the
everybody's
broad
on
road.
the
No.
broad
I said
road.
the majority is on the broad road.
You said everybody. The majority's on the broad road.
What you're doing is you're trying to differentiate who's on the broad road. That's not even the point. The point is the person who's standing in the middle. How do they decide which one is wisdom?
There is nobody standing in the middle.
Okay.
There's not a single
people
person
who want to know.
There's not 30 feet to the truth and 30 feet to a lie, and then everybody's at the 15-foot point.
Yeah.
There's no middle. It's binary thinking.
You're making a mountain out of a molehill, man.
It's binary thinking.
This isn't even what I'm talking about. It's not the question I'm asking. I'm talking about the person that's going to. Okay, listen. Bottom line is whether
you're asking
you
how
do
does
it,
a person on the broad road get on the narrow road?
Hold on. Yes. Okay. So for the person who is foolish in every way, period. Whether it's out of ignorance, they're foolish out of ignorance. They're going to live the rest of their lives as if there is no God because because they lightly rejected it, or they have an excuse or don't have an excuse.
Okay,
how do you get from there to there?
Okay. There's no such person. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
How do you get converted, man?
Okay. Everybody has different ways.
Okay.
Everybody has different ways of coming to the knowledge of the truth. Okay. There's no single way that everybody comes to the knowledge of the truth. Yeah. It's different for different people.
How do you go from being foolish to wise?
I explained it.
Yeah.
You have to start considering the future. You have to start thinking of things in terms of observation.
But there's so many unknowns.
That's right.
You spend your entire life going the wrong direction.
You're going to have to spend your entire life trying to go in the right direction. Yep. That's what's going to happen.
Doesn't Solomon's demise by definition mean there's only wise and only good? That was a question from Elliot.
Well, absolutely, emphatically, no. Because you can't.
You're not giving any answers here, man.
Well, because, okay.
If I am an unwise man, right?
How can I be wise?
Yes.
You have to look at the future. You have to be considerate of the future.
But I am looking at it. There's no God in the future. How do you know there's a God? I'm looking at the future. I don't see any God. I see death. That's the end.
You're not looking into the future. How can you be looking?
How can you convince somebody that there is an eternity?
I don't need to convince somebody that there's an eternity. I need to convince them they don't have wisdom.
Okay. So this is one of the reasons why professors are so easily, no, there is no God. There's a lot of professors like these guys are very intelligent men. But when you try to
lack wisdom, have no wisdom at all.
Try to get from that place
they have no wisdom at all, and they might be intelligent, but they don't have any wisdom. They can't see practical things. I think about this kind of stuff all the time. All the time, I think about because I want to try to convince. I'm always looking for ways to reach intelligent people.
Yeah.
Because I think in my thinking, I think that truly intelligent people should be the easiest ones to reach.
Yeah. Because
they're the ones who are actually thinking. I mean, just think about the story. I was just thinking about this today. I'm, just thinking about the story of how. So here's Joseph and Mary. The story of Joseph and Mary. Okay, Joseph and Mary. Here's this perfect couple. They're both virgins. They're both very holy people. They're both very God-fearing people. And this scenario of people they're young, they're naive in a lot of ways, and then Mary shows up pregnant, and Joseph is like, okay, I don't want to kick her to the curb, but I'm not going to go through with this because it's unrighteous. And so he's going to put her away privately. He's going to end this thing. He's going to listen, this isn't right. You were unfaithful, and I'm not going to be married to somebody who's unfaithful. And then she's pregnant with the Messiah. And Joseph has this dream, and the dream says, go and marry her, and then Bethlehem. And we can go through the whole story. But even if you just stop at, they're in Bethlehem. She's pregnant. She's pregnant and she's just married. And she looks bad, and there's no room in the inn. I mean, this is a bad story.
Yeah.
This is a bad story. But this amazing story, is the story of our salvation. And here we are 2,000 years later, still fighting over it. Is it really true?
Yeah.
Come on. It's either true or it's not.
Yeah.
There is no in-betweens on this story.
Right.
It is either true that this is the story of the Messiah that God brought and saved the world. That's it. It is. Or this is the most terrible, unintelligent, stupidest story that has ever been fabricated. Mm-hmm. There's no in-betweens for it. And if you're a wise person, okay, you can't just say that. You can't just say, stupid story. If you're a wise person, because you have to look at the influence that this stupid story has had worldwide for thousands of years. It's the only one of its kind. You can take, there's a story of a pregnant God and a God being born from a virgin, and there's a story about this, and there's a story about that, and there's a story, and you can take little bits and pieces of the story, and you can throw it over here. You can take 5 seconds of that story over there, another 3 seconds over there, 2 seconds over there, but you're not going to be able to put the whole story anywhere except here. And if you're a wise person, you will look at that and go, there has to be something to this. It can't just be this stupid story, because you have people from all walks of life, smart and simple and rich and poor and first world and third world. I mean, you've got people all over at all walks of life, astrophysicists, and uneducated. I mean, everywhere. And you have people that believe this story from every walk of life. Come on. If you're a wise person, you got to stop and go, okay, I'm missing something here. I'm missing it, because there's something going on here that's either completely and utterly impossible or beyond my own personal comprehension, and I want to find out what that is. So that's what I mean, is I'm talking about like that. And so you got this idea that there are people that, that they're over here and they're, they believe in this and that and the other thing and the other things. And they're just kind of, rejecting it because they're saying, no, this is reasonable and it makes sense and everything. And I just can't figure it out. And, so I'm not going to go with it. And stuff like it's not all that. It's much deeper than that. It's much deeper that people who are seriously considering the Christianity, the story of Jesus, and well, for that matter, all the Bible, the story of the entire Bible, you have to come to a place to where there is a line in the sand, and on one side is absolute, utter nonsense, stupid, or this is beyond human. It's just simply beyond human. And the wise person has to fall over there onto that side, because there's too much. There's too much. And too much you have to ignore. Too much you have to say, I'm not going to even think about. Purposely, you have to say, I'm not going to think about it. I'm just not going to think about it in order to do that. There's just too much.
Oh, we've gone a little bit over. Okay, so what is it in why is it so easy for people to reject the story then?
It's not easy.
When a decision is made to either ignore or reject or just pass by it, why is that? Why is it a thing?
Because I want to get high today. That's why. It's that simple. Yeah. It's that simple. Is I have an agenda that I want to live today for. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to, I'm unwilling to look down the road. I'm not going to. I'm not going to look down the road. I don't want to. Anthony Flew was an atheist, very prominent atheist, and had at the end of his life, he said, I followed the evidence to where it led. There has to be a God. There has to be. The more I thought about it, the more I considered, the more that I looked into it, the more I realized that this was the case.
Well.
Oh, I see. So Eliot's comment, he actually says, does Solomon's demise by definition mean there's no only wise and only good? And the answer to that is yes. I'm sorry. He's correct. Yes, I didn't see that little no. Yeah, there is no only wise or only good.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But yeah. And so Brittany's asking the question again about how to be wise. So the issue, how to be wise, is you have to look down the road. You have to look down the road.
That was said a few times, so I just thought I'd type that in there as well.
You have to look down the road. You have to consider the future. You have to consider these decisions that I'm making today, how are they going to affect me in the future? How is this, what does the it's not just for decisions, it's the idea of working out the future. And so
Brittany, a mom of five.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. I mean, that's the real issue, is that idea, that understanding. And yes, James 1 verse 5 is also helpful as well. If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives freely without and upbraideth not, is what it says in the King James. And so you can ask God, but again, the idea is the future. God knows the future. So asking God will teach you how to look into the future. He will teach you how to consider things that way. It's not, should I do, Jesus isn't a magic 8-ball. Should I buy oil? Yes. It's not, that's not God. That's not how God functions. It's there, but there are considerations, and all wisdom is this going to be worth it long term? You think? I mean, it applies in every area of life. When you're getting ready to get into a fight with your spouse, is this going to be worth it in the long run? Yeah. If I win this fight, have I won? Have I really won? 2 weeks from now, am I going to be glad that I won this fight? By the method that I'm using right now. So everything has to be considered that way. It's looking down the road.
Yeah. Very cool. Sorry for my misunderstanding, Elliot. I didn't actually even read that part, I don't think. So, yes, that was awesome. Look down the road. Not much more to be said. We will be having a service tomorrow. We invite you to join us in person, 1100 Industrial Road in San Carlos. We are at Suite 10. You can come. There's plenty of parking around the area, or around the building, and so you can come and join us in person. We open an hour early for prayer, and so you can come and be a part of what God's doing here and learn to look down the road. We'll see everybody soon.